Okay.
Hey everyone, welcome to another interview on 4GQ TV. I'm Carlo and Paul's with us as well.
Hey, everybody.
He was waiting for his cue there. He didn't know his
Yeah,
line.
I didn't know. I didn't know I was
I'm
supposed to
gonna
say
hold up his
anything.
note
Yeah.
card for him and be like,
Mhm.
say, hey, Paul.
Yeah.
But we have a special guest with us today. We have Colby Elliott. Um, and man, he is very talented. As so we're excited to talk to you, Colby. We're excited to talk to you. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. My name's Colby Elliott, and I produce and narrate audiobooks. I've done about 58, 59 titles on Audible and iTunes, and they range from all kinds of things, nonfiction, things about pop culture. I have a whole series that I've done about how to be a better dungeon master and game master for those folks that play D&D and any of the tabletop role-playing games. I have a whole series on pop culture, and then I try to do different things in genre. I've done fiction, nonfiction, all kinds of stuff like that. And then I do a little bit of writing too. I write travel log pieces about going to different gamer conventions. I did one for Gen Con and one for San Diego Comic Con, another for New York Comic Con that I did. And then I voiced the audiobook for those. And yeah, just try to produce a lot of artistic stuff and try to put as much magic and joy out in the world as I can.
I've been trying to get to Gen Con for years because I have a friend who goes there every year.
Yeah,
So.
yeah. It was really fun. I got to take my youngest. This was they graduated from high school. And I tell my kids, I'm like, hey, you get to choose wherever you want to go. We'll go on a trip.
Mhm.
And my son a while back chose San Diego Comic Con, which was great because that was when I was talking with a lot of those authors that were there about doing audiobooks for their work. And we did a whole trip for that. And then my youngest, we went to Gen Con this last year and got to play a whole bunch of new role-playing games, some of them that we had just sponsored like on Kickstarter. So we got to see early releases of them.
Oh, nice.
It was fantastic. I mean, and just
Okay.
the whole buzz of like,
Yeah.
all those creators.
Okay. Totally off topic. But have you ever
Yeah.
have you ever heard of Rollmaster?
Oh, yes. Rollmaster is, a role-playing game for insurance actuarials, people who like.
Who like did diddle in the numbers? Yes. But that's who my friend works for. That he helps put the books together. And stuff.
Awesome.
So yeah.
So we went, I had a progression. So that's actually kind of folds into how I got into audiobooks is I started playing Dungeons and Dragons and other tabletop role-playing games when I was about 10 or 11 years old. And we went through the Moldvay was our first, bit that we did. And then we kept going all through Advanced Dungeons and Dragons and Call of Cthulhu, Boot Hill, Top Secret, all those. And then eventually our game master was like, well, I want something a little more realistic. And we got into Rollmaster and we played Rollmaster probably for about 2 years. It was amazing because you could spend, an hour and a half rolling up a character and one roll and they're dead.
Yeah.
Okay, well, that was interesting. Let's roll up another character. Yeah. But that, because that is basically sitting around a table and developing an improvisational story with your friends and doing silly voices while you're doing that. Well, that's kind of really great training for audiobooks. I sit in this soundproof booth, that's difficult to say, over here, and I get behind a microphone and make funny voices for a few hours every day, and it all kind of goes back to that time of playing tabletop role-playing games. So
Very cool. Yeah.
and I still play today. So
Yeah.
I have a game.
Yeah.
We just Blades in the Dark last night, which was really fun.
I'm like you. I started on pen and paper in the seventh
Yep.
grade. So
Yeah. What was your first game?
I really can't remember.
Yeah.
Started on pen and paper, but then went to D&D and then AD&D, and had all the books for the second edition at one point.
Yeah. It's awesome. And I and that was actually kind of part of why I did that whole series of like self-help books for D&D role players. One of them is called Sly Flourish's Return of the Lazy Dungeon Master. And then a lot of them are just kind of like how to spend less time doing prep and more time enjoying your players at the table.
Yeah.
And I got a whole series of those. Robin's Laws of Good Game Mastering from Robin D. Laws, who's like a really just kind of a Hall of Famer kind of game creator on the tabletop sense. And just,
Yeah.
it all kind of
Yeah.
ties together. Yeah.
Then I've been to Gary Con twice.
Oh,
Yeah.
I gotta go. I have to go.
I was just gonna say I'm surprised you hadn't gone, given
Yeah.
your background and your pedigree, to head go and meet some of those guys. You know.
I just
Mhm.
booked my flights and my hotel for Origins this next year
Oh,
because
nice.
some of the authors that I've worked with, they've said, well, we don't really go to Gen Con. It's a little bit too busy. And I can definitely understand that. It's like, whoa, it's a lot. And they said, we make Origins our major con. And so I'll be going and checking that out this
Nice.
next summer, which is pretty cool. And then like on the local level, coming up this next weekend, I'm actually going to a set of friends I have in Colorado. We do this thing called Anti-Con, where it's just a group of them, and they have their top floor, their middle floor, and their basement are three different gaming areas, and they invite over a bunch of friends that have known each other for years. This is the 20th year we've done it, and we
Wow.
have three different
Yeah.
gaming sections, and
Yeah.
we just it's this great thing that we do in the Denver metro area. It's awesome, and then I come back. And we have RinCon here in Tucson, and I'm actually playing in a charity D&D event on that Sunday where people get to like make a donation and then choose what they want my character to do, and I have to like turn the bus, and kind of this is what my character's supposed to be doing in this scene, and so it should be really fun. Yeah,
That sounds like it. Very cool.
yeah, yeah.
Well, so now I got a great idea. If you ever play D&D with Paul, I will
Yeah.
donate so you can make his character eat pineapple on pizza.
Oh.
Not a Hawaiian fan, Paul.
No, you watch some of our stuff. You know how I feel about that. Probably. Yeah.
Oh man. That's
Anyway,
awesome. Yeah.
so
So
go ahead.
you got started with, from playing Dungeons and Dragons and tabletop games, and you kind of started doing like self-help books for people that wanted to get into the series or want to learn a little bit more about it. Like I'd be a lazy dungeon master for sure.
Yeah.
I would just curate everything to Paul and be like, Paul, take care of this. Paul, do this.
Yeah,
Paul,
yeah.
I'll be the dungeon master. Paul, do this. So from the self-help books, how did you start getting into the industry and doing more books or more projects?
So, I started off, and I mean, if you want to go all the way back, it's kind of picture me, without the beard and with my little Sony Walkman, my Star-Lord Sony Walkman, and I would go into our public library, and they had the little bags, the little Ziploc bags,
Yeah.
and I would get everything because they didn't have very many. So I might be grabbing like a Louis L'Amour book, or I might be grabbing like Treasure Island, or then there was the one that sort of really blew my mind, which was Tales of Edgar Allan Poe, narrated by Vincent Price
Holy
and
crap!
Basil Rathbone.
Oh,
So
I gotta find that. I gotta find
Yeah.
that. Holy
It's
crap.
still available. It's still available, and it's still just as awesome as it was. But I had that on my headphones, and I would be walking to school. And like this time of year, when it's still dark out,
Yeah.
and you're walking to school, and you're listening to like the Fall of the House of Usher, it's like I can make better time getting to school. Here we go. Okay. And so I started off with that kind of love of audiobooks, all the way through. Even in college, if I would commute home in Nebraska, I would commute from Lincoln to North Platte to like see my folks. I would listen to audiobooks in the tape deck, to and from. And I always just loved audiobooks. And then I started teaching theater after I graduated from college. And I was mixing for live sound on stage for choir concerts and dance concerts and all of these different things. And I figured out that, like, okay, I understand the sound desk really well. I understand the microphones really well. And then I started looking at DAWs, digital audio workstations, to try and figure out how to morph sound effects that I needed on stage into what it was on a CD to what I needed. So like I needed a little chime for a local town square to have sound effects, and all I had was Big Ben. It's like, well, that's going to sound funny in this tiny town of like 5,000 people to have Big Ben chiming out. It's like, well, okay. So you put it in this digital audio workstation, you speed it up, you drop the bass out of it, and then you put it back in there, add in some bird sound effects, and all of a sudden you're in a town square. And this was like what I did when I was teaching middle school theater, and I taught kids how to do that too. And then I moved up to high school theater, and because I wanted a little more complexity with the kind of work I was putting on stage with the kids. And after a while, I was like, based on what I know with all the equipment, I bet I could make an audiobook. And I found a book that I had loved for a long time called Masters of Deception, The Gang That Ruled Cyberspace. And it's about these Gen X.
I know!
Yes.
Yes, Mod. They fought against Legion of Doom.
Yes,
they were back and forth, and they were also, Eric Bloodaxe, and also he was involved in that fiber optic, the late '80s fiber hacker from AT&T, and oh man, I know the whole history of those guys. I know exactly what you're talking about.
That was my first book that I did. And I thought, well, I could figure out how to do this. And I sat down and I voiced the whole thing and I put it through my digital stuff and sent it to the author. And I said, what do you think? And it's like, well, what do you mean? What do you think? It's like, it's great. It's like, okay, so if I figure out a way to sell this, you want to just like split whatever we make? And they said, so you just want us to say yes and you'll just send us half the money, whatever you make on this? I'm like, yeah. And they were like, yes. and they did. And I finished. I tried to polish it up as best I could. I sent it to Audible. Audible liked it. And that was my first book. And then at that point, I could go to the next author and I said, hey, I did this book. Here's what this one sounds like. And I would record the first chapter of the book that I was really interested in and send it to the author. And there would be, oh, that sounds nice. And we just, one became two. Became 58 now. I have like 58, 59 titles now. And it's just one of those things that I don't do like really big auditions, but I will do the first chapter and send it to the author, or sometimes it's just the rights holder. So it could be the agent, the publishing company, or the author, any of those folks, and just kind of get them to sort of see what could possibly be about putting that out in the world and reaching a whole different audience. So, yeah.
Yep.
Wow. So now I got to go re-listen to Masters of Deception.
Okay.
Yes.
One thing I must say is this is my first audio. So when I was recording it, I still had the computer in the room with me with the microphone. So you can actually hear the computer fan in the background. And there's parts of it that like aren't as well edited because this was like way back, 2010, like 14 years ago. It's still a fun book. It's an amazing book. And I know exactly why I was so pumped about it when I first got a hold of it. But at the same time, it's like, well, you're just getting started. Yeah. Each book gets a little bit better. Sometimes you start to find people who their speciality is like, I engineer audiobooks. And so I found another gentleman through a company that I love called Armadillo Audio, and he has now engineered all my books. So I do the main recording, get it to sound super clean, and then I send it to my guy, Peter, and Peter makes it sound glorious and sends it back to me, and then I send it to Audible again, and that's how. So some of the steps have been changed a little bit, and I've grown a little bit as an artist each time as I've gone through each of the steps and each of the periods that I've developed the craft. Yeah.
I have to say I got into Audible when because I have a power scooter and I use it to get around everywhere. So I got into audio. I listened to 2 Dashiell Hammett books. I listened to The Thin Man, which is the movie is pretty strong on with the book, which really surprised me. Yeah. And of course, the Maltese Falcon. I could not listen to the Maltese Falcon.
So one really, if I remember correctly, there is a really great recording of the Maltese Falcon that's done by Scott Brick. Now he's kind of like one of the Hall of Famers for audiobooks. He's the person who got me listening to the entire Dune series. He did the initial recording of the first 4 Dune books. And so whenever I think of Dune, I hear his kind of cadence in my head, and I'm like, oh yeah. And I got to sit down and have lunch with him one time, and we were just sitting there talking, and I'm listening to him talk, and I'm going like, hey Scott, can you just say Kwisatz Haderach real quick? Just say just one. I won't bother you anymore. Yeah, that's the stuff.
So I want to ask you a question because I'm still kind of like excited about this Masters. You have no idea how excited I am about this. I am super excited.
Yeah.
So, with Masters of Deception, did you ever get to interview or meet any of the people in the book? Because I know like some of them went on to legitimate careers, like Fiber Optic did, Eric Bloodaxe did. So, did you ever get to meet up and talk to them later on?
I got the book in the paper form, and I spoke to the authors about getting their permission to do it. And then I did as much research as I could at that time to try and get, all of the pronunciations of all of the names correct and everything to get it exactly just so. But I didn't actually get a chance to talk with them, except I did go to San Diego Comic-Con one time, and I was handing out I hand out these postcards that have like the different titles and stuff that I've worked on. I hand them out at the different conventions, and one of them was Masters of Deception. The guy went, "Oh, this is my group," and I kind of like, "What was your name?" And I know, and then he told me, and I went, "Oh, okay." I think he was like one of the people who was a little like one of the younger ones in one of the groups, and it was pretty fascinating. Yeah.
Wow.
Real life crashing in.
This is the first time that something resonated so hard during an interview with me. And I'll say this, maybe it's because back when I was growing up on computers, like there was IRC, there was AOL, and, everybody in my time had like a handle on AOL. And I remember I was trying to learn different things, and I had friends that worked for AOL's CAT team, the security team and whatnot. And I remember in one of the chat rooms, I met somebody named Pong. And as I was talking to Pong, he was actually teaching me stuff about securing my computer, my network, and all this stuff. And I asked him, how did you know all this? He goes, well, I was a member of Masters of Deception. And that is how I found out about Masters of Deception. But that was like later on. Like he was like a late member. And then I think the group kind of like faded away because it was like AOL was like the mid 90s to like late 90s kind of thing, right? Yeah. And I just remember I started asking him all these questions about like Eric Bloodaxe, and he's like, oh, he's in Texas, he's got a legit job. I was like, man, you guys, I was like, that's awesome. I got so excited. And that is the only time, because I talk to a lot of people, I meet a lot of people, and I'm never fanboyed out over anything before. But when he told me he was Masters of Deception and I looked at that story, I was like, you guys did some really crazy stuff back then. Like there was no laws, no regulation, DOS and BBS boards.
Yeah. Yeah, I've said before that it's because of people like me that we have the laws that we have now. I'm just,
Yeah, there's always there's this wonderful crossover that I'm able to have a lot of times with the authors and some of the people in the books. There's a gentleman named Javier Grillo Marxuach. He was a writer on Lost, and he created a series called The Middleman. He did the Dark Crystal Age of Resistance. He was one of the writers on there. He's just an amazing writer. And I met him at Comic-Con, and we just started talking, and he had these series of essays that he had written that I had actually read a few of them, and they really spoke to me. It was kind of one of those things. He had some thoughts on pop culture that I read them, and I'm like, those are my thoughts. I just didn't know I had those. And he had articulated them in such an incredible way because he's got such a gift with words. And so that kind of crossover, that is one of the things that really fires you up about all of the different things that I've discovered with all of these different titles. You'll do something for somebody, and then all of a sudden they blow up. And it's like, oh, they're everywhere now. And you're like, oh yeah, I remember when we had this really great conversation this one time about stuff, and it was great,
Okay, so I got to ask, is there one author in particular that you would love to do his work that you haven't had a chance to yet?
Oh man, I have over here a very sort of what I call the secret stack. And it has all of these books of authors, and some of it is a little bit of like literary archaeology, where I'm going like, oh, this is interesting. I don't think there's an audiobook of this. And I'll just set this off to the side and I'm going to track down this author and see what he says. And so I've got them in this little case that I look at too. But the thing is I try never to speak them out loud. Because by speaking them out loud, I think it sort of like curses them or makes the universe think that they've been done. And so I typically I won't say the ones that I'm interested. I mean, there's obviously ones that I go, oh, I would love to do that, but they're kind of spoken for because they're a huge big deal. I mean, who wouldn't want to do like a Stephen King book? I mean,
that's what I was thinking of, actually.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Anyone would want to do a Stephen King book. But if you notice, he doesn't really have just one narrator.
No,
he has several. He has several, and someone might do one thing, and then there'll be another guy who's like Will Patton will do a couple of these. Then at one point he had like James Spader might have done one.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Johnny Depp did one, and like he just sort of picks and chooses, and for me, because I'm the one who chooses, I choose all of my stuff. I don't actually get assignments from the publishers. I actually seek them out. Each and every single one of them are passion projects for me.
I was going to say that's nice for you because you're picking what you're interested in, and you're not I got to slog through this thing.
Well, that's the thing is like you look at how long, like let's say I'm doing a 10-hour audiobook. That 10-hour audiobook represents 30 to 50 hours of production time.
Yeah.
So you better love that book because you're going to be spending a lot of time with it, listening to it, re-listening to it. And then I go through and I listen to my recordings and I kind of direct them in certain ways, take certain takes over other takes. And, you really have to be passionate about that. So when you choose that book, it's got to be something you're really, really interested in.
Yep. Okay. And this will kind of wrap us into Greenbeard, which is the book that I've listened to parts of it. I freely admit I haven't had a chance to finish it yet, but you slip in and out of voices and stuff. And you just said it takes many hours to do that. How do you do that on the roll, or do you do take after take and switch voices? And
so you have a pre-read session, and that's part of your production time. That's part of that extra 3 to 5 time is that pre-reading time. And as I'm doing that, I'm looking at to say, okay, this character appears in this scene here. So these two characters appear together. They can't be terribly similar. So you have to think about how you're going to do those. The gender of the character, how they express their, where they're from in the world, all of those things. And then also I started off, when I went to university, I started off as being a vocal performance major. I was going to be an opera singer. And then I realized that music theory is hard. And and after I realized music theory is hard, I'm like, well, maybe I shouldn't be a vocal performance major because that's difficult. And so I moved over to the theatrical side of things. But one thing I took away a lot of things from performing, because I kept doing operas and things like that, is, you divide the voice into soprano, alto, tenor, bass. And then within those, you have soprano 1, soprano 2, alto 1, alto 2. So you subdivide your voice within those pitches. So you have things that are all the way up here, and these might be, kids that are talking here, and you go all the way down here, and maybe this guy's like a ogre or something like that. He's going to be talking about stuff like that there. And you use every single element of the instrument in between. Yeah. And then once you've made those choices, those artistic choices, then you have to figure out, okay, where's the narrator at? And that's where you probably want to have that be your most natural voice, because you're going to be spending the most time with them.
Right.
Yeah.
I saw a interview with what's his name from Family Guy?
Seth MacFarlane?
Seth MacFarlane. And they asked him and said, because he's always switching voices off and on. But he said when he's recording, sometimes he'll do that. But other times he'll do one voice and then he'll go back and do one of the other voices, and he'll cut them together so they flow better.
Yes.
So
yeah. And that is definitely the case with some of the things in Greenbeard. It's, if you look at the main pirate captain, Sylvester de Greybags. He has a voice that's kind of like down here. And he's army mateys and like this. And, you know, you can only do that for about 25 minutes. And then your voice is pretty blown out. You need to go grab some tea or something like that there. And then you come back and you have to do, you know, the fair maiden who he has just talked to. And but your voice is trashed. So you'll do those then, and you'll kind of spot in his stuff while you're doing her stuff, and then you'll move them into a single combined piece. Yeah.
So on your scripting and stuff, you have like all kinds of different colors and stuff to notate. I'm doing this. I'm doing this. I'm doing this.
It's like someone melted a pack of Skittles all over the page. There's so many different highlighters that I use. Yeah, it's kind of amazing because sometimes they're not really great about attribution. You know, they might not say who's talking here. They just kind of figure, you know. And then also, you know, some people will say, well, can't you just start off and just read the book into the microphone and not and, you know, then it's a surprise for you. It's like, yeah, you can. But then some authors will wait until like the last chapter and say, he said in his lilting Irish accent. And you go,
oh, crap.
I just did 7 hours of him not sounding like that. I have to go back and do all that now again. So yeah, you can't just wait. No, you have to. It takes quite a bit of academic study, which, you know, that's kind of what I studied for. When I was doing my undergrad, I did a degree in English with an emphasis in literature, and then I did speech communications and theater arts, and then I did language arts with an education degree. So it was kind of like all those things crossed over to the point where that's basically what I do. I actually use all those degrees for audiobooks, and it does take a little bit. Yeah. It takes research. It takes practice. It takes knowing intentionality and being able to, you know, bifurcate sentences and structures so you can find those operative words to make it sing. Yeah, and that's not just on fiction either. It's also on nonfiction too. Because like if someone wrote a nonfiction book, they might have spent 5 years, and this is their white heat passion. So you need to come across like you are the number one, you know, cheerleader for this particular subject for this author. So yeah. Yeah.
So how many times would you say you read a book? Because I assume that you would read it relatively straight through one time and go, okay, this is interesting. I like this. But yes. Then you have to go back and go through. Now you have to start picking it apart.
Right. Okay. Yeah. And, you know, you'll have that first opening read through, and it's like, is this something I want to do? Okay, great. Yes. So let's look at that first section. Interesting. Okay, let's record that. Does it kind of agree with how my sensibility? Yeah, I like that. That's nice. Okay, I might think about that, but I want to read it one more time before I send it out to the author. And then once I get the author's okay, now we're going a little bit more in depth. We're making a lot more notations. We're taking a lot of things where we're going to go, okay, this needs to change here. Yeah, absolutely.
I was going to say, at some point, I would assume you start creating in your notes a cast of characters.
Yes.
Okay, here's the captain, here's the first mate, here's the, you know,
yeah, exactly right. And some of those, it's interesting because you can find certain ones that the author is very clear about how they want them to sound. But then in other cases, they're really not. But if you're able to do a truly horrible celebrity impersonation that sounds nothing like them, you know, it'll sound like a character, but not the character you think it sounds like. That might be a perfect fit for a layover for what you want to do for this minor character who only appears in this one scene because he's got to fire off a cannon or something. So yeah, absolutely.
Very cool.
Yeah, for sure.
So why don't you tell us a little bit about Greenbeard?
Well, Greenbeard starts off, and it's a straight up pirate tale, and it is very historically, it's on par with how things are meant to be. We're talking about the parts of the sailing ship, and there are historical figures in there that you will recognize, and some of them that have been transposed a little bit. But very quickly, after you get the standard pirate fare in, all of a sudden, it takes a turn. Because the pirates think that they are going to be invading the Spanish plate fleet, the silver ships. And in fact, they get mixed up with a Martian saucer fleet. And the captain, who up to that point has a golden lustrous beard, is taken prisoner by this saucer fleet and transported to another planet. He then has to figure out a way back and spends the rest of the time trying to figure out a way to get to that planet, plotting revenge against those who have taken him prisoner. Along the way, there are a metric ton of puns, bawdy sea shanties, funny little turns of phrase and little moments that are just kind of hilarious. One of my favorite puns is there as they talk about the ship's cook, and he's like, "Oh yes, there, he was very good at cooking all of these different types of dishes, but at one point he decided to make a stew out of hyena meat, and he became a laughing stock." Oh. I know. And I went, oh. If there's more of this book is mine. This is like right into my, yes, please, wheelhouse. Bang. Okay, here we go. Let's go play. And basically, yeah, it's very playful. And at the same time, the characters are fun. There's a lot of really interesting nods to history and different moments. And it's great. And eventually the pirates figure out how to take a pirate ship to Mars. It's pretty great.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
It's like, it's really cool because it's like technology that is, a lot older mixed with technology that is futuristic. And it's like, okay, so these guys could figure it out. These guys could figure out something, how to get there. Yeah, that's cool.
And they throw a little steampunk in there, and what's kind of really cool about this book, at first, it really intimidated me because it had so many different disparate characters and voices that I was just like, oh man, I don't know how I'm gonna do that for 14 hours. And then I started thinking about it more closely, and I looked at like my experience and how that laid over what the book was, and it was perfect. I was a foreign exchange student in England for a year, and while I was there, it was my mission to go around to the different regions, listen to the way people talk, get that musician's ear, and figure out how to replicate that. So I'd always had this real interest in accents in the UK. And then I had also been a huge fan of like the Patrick O'Brien, Aubrey Maturin series. And the gentleman who had done it, that series for audio, his name is Patrick Tull. And he's kind of an audiobook hero of mine. I've listened to probably every single one of those books, except for the last incomplete one. And I actually went to sleep with him on my ear, listening to him narrate different parts of these seagoing adventures. And it was just, I felt like I had to immerse myself in it the whole time. And it was just so much fun. And I would get that time to go into the studio and just play. And when you allow yourself that and you have all that preparation and you move into the studio, that's where you get a chance to see like, oh, magic's going to happen here. And it does. You have all of this preparation that comes in and it becomes this magical thing. And what's neat about that is most recently we found out about a week and a half ago that the Society of Vocal Arts and Sciences nominated Greenbeard as being best audiobook narration in science fiction. Nice. And yeah, so we're one of 5 books that have been nominated in the science fiction category. And I think it's December 8th. I go out to Los Angeles and there's going to be a gala, get all fancied up and sit out in the audience and hopefully come back with some hardware.
Oh, so, nice.
Yeah.
Very nice.
Congratulations. That's awesome.
Thank you. It's been great. Along the way, we've developed all these really wonderful relationships. I was talking about how I had, talked to the authors of Masters of Deception. My second book was called The Supergirls, and it was through a publishing house called Exterminating Angel. And they do these wonderful books that are just quite unlike anything else that's on the market. And Greenbeard is actually published by Exterminating Angel. And it's because I had this relationship that I started with Todd Davies, the publisher, in 2010. And I had done a lot of her books along the way. And she gave me this book and said, I think this is your thing. And she was absolutely right. And it's been this relationship we've developed together. And, now possibility maybe bringing home, like I said, bringing home some hardware from the Sovo.
Nice. Very nice. So
Yeah, that's awesome.
So I'm curious, for even though you have all the different ranges, do you ever use like the computer to kind of maybe change the pitch a little bit or do something with your voice that you can't necessarily do naturally?
Okay, so I've done that on a couple of occasions. It has to be very specific.
Right.
One of them would be if characters are talking exactly over the top of each other. And there's one situation in Greenbeard where that happens. Two characters are talking over the top of each other, saying ostensibly the same words.
Right.
But there's not really any way for me to convey that in that dual
Right.
sense. I'll record them specially and then mix them over the top of one another so that you have that idea that that's happening. The only other time that I manipulate the recording is, and this is a little bit of a secret. So I'm going to let you guys in on a little bit of a secret. When I start recording in the morning, I have very low morning voice. This is CNN. Simba, all of this is yours. Luke, I am your father. All that kind of stuff. That's all morning voice. And then as we get into the afternoon, I start to climb up into my tenor range. And it's about, it's kind of like where it is right now. So if I have something I narrated in the afternoon in my tenor range, but then I have to go back to do error corrections for it, because let's say I accidentally said that everyone was going on a shopping spree and it was supposed to be a killing spree, my bad,
Yeah.
but it is very different. You have to go back and correct that. And so you might punch into that recording and record just that sentence, and you have to hit that pitch the same. Well, it's a baritone in the morning, it's a tenor in the afternoon. So I might take the pitch bender and bend it so that it bends and is more of an exact match, so that you don't hear that I punched into the recording
Right.
at those two different times. So that's really the only time I try to manipulate it. Other than that, the microphone it's a wonderful, faithful instrument of conveying your art on there. And if you want to do something different, go back and do another take. Why not? But I think manipulating it like that in such a way, I don't know. You can. I know some people do, but that's probably just not something I would use. Yeah.
I know personally, for me, I don't like the sound of my own voice. And I've done this a lot. I really don't like. I go back and I'll go back and watch parts of this and go, oh, I sound like crap.
I mean, I could imitate Paul's voice and do it.
Oh, shut up.
This is Paul. I like pineapple on pizza. It's my favorite delicacy. I'll add mustard as well. That's Paul. That's my voice accent of Paul. I hope
that's why
I get at me for that one day.
There are a lot of actors who won't watch themselves on screen.
Yeah.
There are a lot of people who don't listen to their sound recordings like if they're singers. But I think for me, because I'm not just the performer, I'm also the director.
Yeah.
I might be judging between a couple of different takes. You need to get over that pretty quickly, because when I put on that director hat, I have to be absolutely just ruthless with that actor person.
Yeah.
That actor person, he did all these great takes, and oh, that's wonderful. You did such a great job emoting. Now I need to pick the right performance that's going to fit within the scene here.
Yep.
And I need to take those your actory emotions and set them off to the side.
But the first time you heard your voice, were you like, oh my God, do I sound like that?
My dad actually bought me a cassette tape player recorder, and it's the same one that, of course, I made my mixtapes on the FM radio, standard Gen X thing, making the mixtapes. But I would actually go into my room and I would do radio shows or different things like that with the tape recorder. So I've been listening so long, but it's always different. It always sounds different, and I can always tell if there's something. It's like, a little more allergens in the air today. I can tell just from how it's a little more nasally, or maybe not as much cream in your coffee in the morning before you go record, because I'm hearing that kind of like a clickiness, that kind of, but green apples are great for that too. If you ever have that clickiness in your mouth, you just dice up some Granny Smith apples and eat them before you go on your mic, and clears it right out.
I know for me, like I did the long stream this previous weekend.
Yes.
And you can tell the difference between the beginning of the stream and the end of the
Yes.
stream. When I'm like, I can't get everybody, it's like I got nothing left. Yeah, yeah,
Must stay hydrated.
yeah. And from the old school of tea, honey, and lemon.
Yes, and there's the reason why that's the old school, because it is very effective.
Yeah.
It is very effective. Yeah, we even have one that we use specifically for singers and voiceover called Throat Coat, which actually has kind of a nice. I think it's got like slippery elm or something in it that is really nice. It tastes nice, and at the same time, it's also does a good job in sort of protecting the throat a little bit too. Yeah, for sure.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
One thing I was going to ask you is, since this is like your, profession for you, what kind of microphone or what kind of studio setup do you usually have? I always ask this question. I'm curious. Everybody's got a little bit of a different take, but I'm curious what yours would be.
So when I first started, I used the same microphone that I used for my alternative rock band that I went out and played in clubs with. So one, that mic smelled like cigarette smoke and all kinds of stuff, and it was terrible. It did not sound great. I have since gone through, there's a microphone that I really like called the E100. I did that for a long time. It's an American-made microphone. I really like that. And I used that for a long time because I had a very low noise floor. And then I have one that I have, it's called the Hulk. A gentleman out on Cape Cod would take a kind of a $60 mic and put all these expensive components inside of it and turn it into something that is almost like the AT series mics. And I really enjoyed that one for a while. That was my go-to mic. And then I got one now that I'm using from Austrian Arts, and it is a really great microphone, even quieter, even better for my voice. It really does kind of rotate. I did one that was called, I did this one book that was in the 80s, and I knew I wanted it to have a vintage sound, so I actually found a vintage ribbon mic and did the whole audiobook in that. But it's kind of muffly. And the name of that book is called Guesswork, and it took place in the 80s, and so it had this kind of ribbon in it. I loved it, but I only used it for that one book because it sounded perfect for that, and for everything else it just sounded too muffled. I've tried the Tele. I've got a Telefunken, the same one that like Frank Sinatra really liked for on stage. I thought, oh, this will be great. And one of my friends said, oh yeah, it's got the tubes, and when the tubes warm up, it gives your voice this really great thing. I think it would work great for your voice. And you get in the studio, and yes, and I tried it for a couple of podcasts, and it was great. I really like the Austrian Arts right now, but it sort of feels kind of like a golfer, and who's your caddy kind of thing. It's like, wonder what microphone I should use for here. Well, this one seems nice. Perhaps we'll hook this one up, but the Austrian Arts one is probably the one that has been my standard one right now. It's the one that's locked and loaded inside the vocal booth off to my left here. So
yeah, it's like everything, different mics have different sound qualities to them, and
they do
want to touch into that. Yeah.
They absolutely do. And anything that you can manipulate within that's part of what you can create into the art.
Yeah.
And I don't think any of that is off limits, but you just have to be very careful with what you manipulate, because you could because you're usually, like with audiobooks, you're usually working on several things at one time. It's really awkward to have to change the microphones out, because if I'm doing the main recording of one book, but I'm doing error corrections on this other book, I need to have the same mic in there. I can't be switching it out and changing distances, and I'll get different plosives, and it might even come down here. So if it's further down towards my chest, it's going to have a more of a lower cadence than if I move it up a little higher, so it gets the front end of the instrument of your skull. Yeah. For sure. So I understand the gearheads always like to ask me about the microphones, and there's a lot of them. My wife would say far too many for what much recording I do.
So most of the voice actors and actresses that we ask, a lot of them, I never heard of Austrian Arts, so now I'm gonna look this up because I'm curious. Because a lot of them go straight to the Newmans, because that's what
Yeah.
a lot of the studios recommend. But I don't think that they really have a general knowledge of all the microphones out there. So they just go with, okay, the studio recommended this, that's what I'm going to get. And I think that's how a lot of people end up using like the Newmans. Like just podcasters, a lot of them use the Shure mics because it's recommended for podcasting. But there's a lot of mics that are similar to Shure. They might not have all the bells and whistles, but the inside's kind of like the same, just doesn't have all the nice little dots on the outside, or, you know. So that's what this is. This is they call this the knockoff Shure mic. It's the I think it's called F Deuce, but it's got the same type of canister, same kind of So
some of us are just poor. Some of us are just poor and use a Blue Yeti. I mean, whatever.
Maybe not the Snowball. Maybe not.
No, stay away from the Snowball for sure. Yeah.
But I mean, if you look at the pattern, a visual representation of the pattern that the microphone produces. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you can see that you can lay them right over the top of one another. And most people, you have to realize, I mean, you're talking about spending $1,500 on a microphone, $600 on a microphone, $150 on a microphone, and they're listening to them on $6
earbuds. Yeah.
I mean, it's like, well, okay, if it makes you happy, that's great. Yeah, and I've gone through many different iterations and stuff like that.
I will say the reason I chose the Blue, aside from I could afford it because I'm a poor person, was the fact that I could change how the microphone functions, where it gets the sound from.
Yes.
So I'm not getting all the background noise around me, and I can isolate my voice.
Yeah. Yeah. The utility is really important, and and when I go into the studio, there's a few things that you're always making sure that you have equidistance on your mic, so when you go to record, you're consistent there. Your mic levels occasionally will need to change depending on what you're narrating. Like when I was narrating Greenbeard, it was one of those things where I had to push to get certain elements of the character out. So if I was doing the pirate voice, I was going like this. Yeah. But if I was going to be doing something like my latest book that I'm recording, which is like Forge of Foes, it's a Dungeons and Dragons style, book. It's a lot more relaxed. You're not pushing nearly as hard. You need to change that recording level so that you're going to have that same amount of clarity, of beauty with the instrument and the voice. Yeah.
And I would think for you, it's important that the levels to the listener don't change. So even though your pirate may sound louder and more forceful, that same voice for the female person, you can't have her being all quiet in your ear. She has to sound like she's at the same level, even if she's talking much more demurely or whatever.
Yeah, and every audiobook is an intimate performance right in your ear. Yeah. So I mean, you have to have a real appreciation for that kind of intimacy, and the fact that you might be in that person's head. Like if let's say they're taking the dog for a walk and they've got their earbuds in. Yeah. It's very intimate. You want to make sure you kind of honor that intimate space.
Right, and that's 10 to 14 hours of intimacy sometimes, depending on the book.
Can be a good relationship for sure. Yeah. Or if it's a series, it could be even more. Yeah. For sure. Yeah.
So when there's parts in a book, like maybe in Greenbeard, I haven't listened to it. I should start listening to it now after we talked about it. But maybe there's sea shanties, right? So like you got to sing.
That's right.
So do you get on the mic and you actually sing, or do you like use tools on the computer like auto tune like some singers do?
Nope. There's a couple of sea shanties that I have to sing for Greenbeard, and one of them is actually a sea shanty that is about dung, and it's a hilarious thing towards the end of the book, and the guy starts singing this shanty, and the captain says, "If you don't cut that off, I'm gonna throw you overboard." It's hilarious. And part of that, again, you look at like as a vocal performance major, that was something that I did. I did opera, and so there was another book that I did called Fender Benders, and at the end there's this really quiet spiritual that a guy sings graveside after his wife passes away, and you have to have that quiet moment where you're the microphone is right there, and you're singing this hymn into the microphone, and yeah, you pour your heart out into it, and realize that person on the other end is going to be taking it into theirs. So.
Okay, so so we talked about Greenbeard, which I can't wait to finish because it's great so far. Do you have anything else coming up soon that we can keep an eye out for?
Oh man, well, Forge of Foes that I'm working on for Sly Flourish is it's like I said, it's a book for 5e Dungeons and Dragons, which is like how to integrate antagonists into your D&D campaigns. And so I'm working on the audio version of that. I would imagine that's going to probably come out in January. I'm actually kind of expanding my acting horizons a little bit. I'm going to be doing a walk-on cameo role in a Western that's appearing that's shooting down here in Tucson, in Mezcal. It's called Government Work. And it's the director, Alex Cox, who did Repo Man and Sid and Nancy. He's doing his final film as a Western he's shooting down in Mezcal, Arizona. So I get to put on all my cowboy gear. And that's actually the whole reason why I have my big beard. I usually completely clean shaven, and I've got the longer locks and stuff like that. So I've got a couple of days where I'll be shooting that, and that's going to be really fun. And so I'll be doing that, and that should be coming out, well, however long it takes him to edit a movie. So that could be another year yet. And then after that, I've taken a lot of my older work. I did a podcast called Geekery and Wine. And I took something out of geek culture and paired it with a bottle of wine, and then talked about the two of them. And then I had a third section where I did like liner notes for one of my audiobooks, including Masters of Deception, just for those of you. Yeah. And I put those, it was on Anchor Media for a while, and all those episodes are out, but I decided I want to take them and put them together into an audiobook, and then do what I'm calling palate cleansers in between, where I tell like different stories of things that have happened to me in the audiobook world. So, and that I'm guessing is probably going to come out sometime in February. I've written all of the Geekery and Wine episodes are already all out, and some of them will feel maybe a little vintage, just like the wine, because some of them are older pieces of geek culture that really meant a lot to me. And so, and that will probably be coming out, I don't know if I'm going to say February. Probably, yeah.
Nice, yeah.
And then I've got always a few other irons in the fire, and a few things on the secret shelf over here that will come to light as soon as I'm able to talk to the authors and sign the contracts with them. So, yeah.
Can't wait to check them all out. I mean, and after listening to what I have and talking to you, I definitely want to check out more of your work as well. You know?
Thanks, man. I think there's one that you'll really like. It's kind of a modern take on a fairy tale. It's called Snotty Saves the Day. It's also one that I did with Exterminating Angel, and it's a hoot. I tell you, I get to do all these really, really fun characters. It's a kick in the pants. It really is.
And since I have an interest in it, I have to ask, have you done any horror books?
I did one. It was an anthology called My Peculiar Family. And
I vaguely remember that.
So My Peculiar Family, it was sponsored by a gentleman called The Dome from a podcast called Sci-Fi Saturday Night. He had interviewed a whole bunch of people and then decided to put together a horror anthology. And so I got a chance to do a lot of like really interesting contemporary horror pieces that were super, super interesting and really challenging. From a vocal standpoint and just from a narration standpoint, really, really cool. I would love for people to hear that book. It's really
I'm gonna have to check that out.
Yeah. And nicely segmented too, of a lot of different stories. So if you're like, I finished doing the dishes, okay, and stop. So yeah.
Oh, that's good. Yeah. So it is like a true anthology where you can.
It absolutely is. Yeah, for sure. Yeah. And if you have, other interests, like I said, I did a lot of pop culture stuff.
Yeah.
So I did quite a few books, a collection of essays that were done on Firefly and Buffy the Vampire Slayer. And
you just named two of my favorite things right there. Yeah.
And I had one that I was nominated for an Audie Award for, which was called Coffee at Luke's, which was about Stars Hollow and Gilmore Girls, which I was a huge fan of Gilmore Girls. And I actually recorded that book while I was living in New England. And so it felt like I was basically immersed and cosplaying, going into town, like, okay, this is New England and it's fun and charming and look at the leaves and it's beautiful. Yeah.
That's
really
like
cool.
we interviewed a filmmaker who did a Stephen King story a while back, and she actually went up to the university he went to and stayed there while she was putting the film. That's where they did the filming, and she said it was very much like waking up in a Stephen King story.
Yeah,
because
yeah,
it just immerses you in that,
Yeah, yeah. It's absolutely definitely something to be said for being on location like that, for sure. I got to actually do a drama, an audio drama called Of Fae and Fiends. And it was through Degas Media, and it was a modern kind of fairy tale anthology podcast story. And we did it up in a studio in Maine, and it was so cool. And to be able to be there and actually look the other actors in the eye across the studio and emote off of them too. And I got to do about 2 or 3 different characters in there. And it was really, really, really fun. Yeah.
That had to be different though, because you're used to sitting in a booth by yourself and just talking to the microphone. This time you actually had people you could look at and you could feed off each other like actors do,
Absolutely. And it was just like that. Really. You could just feel it every single time. It was great. And we had a director right there in the booth with us too. So you could go back and take another thing and say, well, try doing a little bit of this. And it was really exciting. Really exciting.
Very cool.
Yeah. Yeah.
Trying to think. I don't think so. I know your question's coming up, but I kind of want to put myself in the vision of Paul the elf, and maybe do a little bit of voice here. Hey, this is Polly the elf,
Jesus.
and I have a question for you. Can you answer the question? All right, Paul, take it away.
I'm gonna hurt you. So
I'm thinking, okay, so if Paul, if you're an elf though, you'd have to be a Paul in the hall, wouldn't you?
Yeah.
Instead of being an elf on the shelf, you'd be Paul in the hall.
Yeah. And trust me, I'll be a very grumpy elf. I'd be the pissed off elf. Okay. I'll be like, the fat man's coming. What's he want now? Jesus. I got stuff to do. Christmas is right around the corner.
Was there any other geek culture stuff you guys wanted to talk about? We could definitely
I can
spend some
talk
time about that too.
But talk about the D&D stuff, man.
Yeah.
I used to have a group that I played with online. I haven't had it for years, but man, I miss it. I really do. I mean,
yeah. I mean, there's nothing better than sitting around a table and telling a story with all of your friends together. When I actually got to go to Gen Con, it was the year that Sly Flourish's Return of the Lazy Dungeon Master, we got nominated for an Ennie Award for Best Digital Book. And we actually ended up winning the Gold Ennie for that book. And in the speech, Mike couldn't be there, so I had to go up and give the speech. And I said that D&D, tabletop role-playing games, sitting around a table, telling stories together with your friends, that's how we save the world.
Yeah.
You have those moments where you become heroic, those moments where you make decisions together, you collaborate together, and you build fantastic memories that you then talk about together. Like, you remember that one time when that Minotaur did it? And it ends up being fantastic.
And even though I don't have that personally, when I've had groups, they have tools like Roll20, and so it allows us to be on microphones and headsets, and looking at the same maps and stuff, and so it feels like you're in the same room.
Yeah, my friends from Massachusetts that I was playing Blades in the Dark with last night, all 3 of them live in Massachusetts, and I live in Arizona. And we started playing The King in Yellow, which was this wonderful role-playing game that has 4 different timelines with 3 different sets of characters.
Holy crap.
Right. It was a lot to keep in your brain. And we played that thing for 4 years. And finally, the game master said, guys, we can keep role-playing together. I love that our group is together and has been together, because that same group, most of them were We were together the 5 years that I lived in Massachusetts, and then the 4 years that I've lived here in Arizona. And it was amazing. He says, but I cannot take all the timelines and all the care. I just can't do it anymore. So we switched over to Blades in the Dark. And I look forward to that. We play once or twice a month, and it's our time to kind of get together and tell these great stories. And I just love hanging out with them. And it takes those distances away. But I also have that with video games too. Like I am a huge Destiny 2 fan. And I have been playing Destiny 2 with my buddy Brandon back in Nebraska for probably 8 or 9 years. And when I moved out there to New England, he actually called my wife and said, hey, I miss hanging out with your husband. Is it okay if I send him an Xbox?
Ooh.
Yeah. And my wife said, yeah, that's fine. And so we would play. We get up. It's ridiculous. We would get up on like Saturday morning at like 6 in the morning, and we play for a couple hours before the house wakes up. And we played in with me in New England and him in Nebraska. And then when I moved to Arizona, I called his wife and I said, hey, remember when he sent me an Xbox that one time? Would it be okay if I sent him a PS5? And she was like, yeah, I think he'd totally dig that. And so we're still playing almost every weekend we're playing Destiny 2 together, shooting rocket launchers, talking, solving the problems of the world. It's good stuff, man.
Yeah.
It's a great way to cross those distances. Yeah.
I have a group of people I play games with a lot on the Xbox.
Yeah.
So yeah.
What's your favorite? What are you into right now?
Right now, I because I do the podcasting and stuff, I do play Let's Play Keep Up. So I'm doing Call of Duty Black Ops 6.
Excellent.
I'm doing the Dragon Age Veilguard.
Oh sure, yeah.
And
you are current.
Yeah, I try to be because I'm on shows where we got to talk about the current stuff.
Yeah.
And it's and plus Xbox Game Pass. What can I say? It makes it a lot easier to keep up sometimes. But my all-time favorite has to be Red Dead Redemption 2.
Cool.
Which is if you've never played that game, it's an amazing story.
Yeah.
And but I started with Destiny 1 and Destiny 2, but then I was away from it for so long. Now when you go back to Destiny 2, your map blows up with all kinds of crap, and you're like, I don't even know where to start.
It's complicated. It's complicated. Yeah, for sure. For sure. Yeah. How about you, Carlo?
Call of Duty Black Ops 6. I've been grinding on that a lot.
Nice.
I'm gonna start Dragon Age soon. I call it the Veilguard. Paul always corrects me.
Yes. Well, if you want to protect lunch, I guess that's what it would be.
And then I also play Ara History Untold.
Oh,
I think either History Retold or Untold. It's slipping my mind right now because I'm thinking of Call of Duty. But I love that game because speaking of stories, right, and stories in the world, in this game you can actually choose a leader that you want to be, and of course they chose most of the leaders throughout history that were kind to people, with a few exceptions. From the Roman Empire, which I thought was cool.
I was going to say those people were never cool to their subjects.
Well, some of them were. George Washington was great too.
No, I'm talking about the Roman Empire ones. I'm talking about the Roman Empire one.
Yeah,
not cool.
So you get to pick your leader, and then you kind of like build out your city, and it kind of like goes through the ages, right? It goes through the early days of like from when Paul first saw the world of the Stone Age and the sticks and all that, and then you get to modern society with like police stations and Air Force, and it's so cool how you can go in that game and you could start out with archers, right? You have archers, and then all of a sudden you have infantry. You could still be battling against somebody that's still on the archer age, like they haven't gone through the technology as fast as you in your game. So it's I like that because it's like retelling the story of America, Germany, whatever you want it to be, because you can pick. So I think that's a fun game. I love sim strategy games.
Okay, so question for you then, aside from Destiny 2, what are some of the other games that you enjoy playing?
Oh, so for me, I love an awesome storyline. So I believe it was Time Loop. I really enjoyed that one. Is that right? Time Loop?
Is it Deathloop?
Deathloop. Thank you.
Deathloop,
Thank you.
yeah.
Deathloop. Deathloop was fantastic. Like Alien Isolation.
Okay, that's one of my favorites right there. Everybody says,
yeah.
"What's one of your favorite horror games?" That's the first one that always comes to mind, right there.
Yeah.
That.
And really, I love that the first person where I get to progress through the storyline, and that to me is really awesome. Like
Yeah.
Thief, Thief is amazing.
I wish they would come up with because I think you're younger than me, but I don't think by much. But Thief: The Dark Project, when it first came out on
Yes.
PC, and
that was so
they've
cool.
never been able to match that again.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah, that was magic. That really
Yeah.
was. Yeah. Oh man,
Yeah.
just the steampunk and was
Yeah.
so great. Well, hold on though. Dishonored.
Dishonored's close. Yeah, I like
Yeah,
Dishonored.
it really. I mean, if you're coming up, that's something that arrives pretty closely. And in terms of like a good story, I
Right.
really love that a lot too. Yeah. Yeah.
And then let's see what else is there. So you like story-driven games? Do you do the supermassive stuff, the horror anthologies, the Dark Picture anthology stuff?
I have them. A lot of them I have not. I started one of them, and I've been trying to convince my buddy Brandon to take, because we've been going back and forth between a few different things. Like for a while we did Destiny, and then he's like, "I'm bored." I'm like, "Okay," so we went over to Borderlands because
Love
that was
Borderlands,
close.
Yeah.
And then we moved from that. Was like, okay, well, how about Gears of War? We did Gears of War for a while, and that was really cool. And then and so we keep kind of moving around, and I think we even did like there was a Wolfenstein that was a co-op
Oh yeah.
that we played as well too, where you're
Yeah,
the
I
two
believe
daughters.
that was Youngbloods. I think that was
Yes,
Youngbloods.
it was, and it was so much fun. So a lot of times we're like kind of going way back in time and finding these older games just because they were like occurred on somebody's co-op list.
Yeah.
And so a lot of times we'll go back and do some of those too. But yeah, we have done some of the some of the other kind of role-playing ones too. I'm trying to think.
Any Baldur's Gate? Have you done Baldur's Gate yet?
My son does Baldur's Gate. I have not. I have not done that one. But he says I should.
Baldur's Gate 3 is something you should try.
I
Definitely,
have heard. Yes, he has tried to push me on that too. And what was the other one he was wanting me to do too? Where it's basically, it's like it's a lot like the Heinlein, where you're battling the bugs.
I know what you're talking about.
Helldivers.
Helldivers.
Helldivers 2. He sent me a copy of Helldivers 2, and he wants me to get going on that one as well. So the problem is, it's like, well, I mean, yeah, but as you know, I only have like this much time for video games, this much time for tabletop games, and then I kind of got to make a little bit more time for those audiobooks and books and all the stuff I got to write.
Yeah.
Darn adult life.
Yeah.
So
Need more time. Yeah.
Exactly.
when you say like the narrative co-op games, have you played like It Takes Two or A Way Out?
I have not done those two yet, but I have pitched them to him, and we'll probably, it'll be the next time that he decides he's done with Destiny for a while. We'll probably be doing one of those.
A Way
Or
Out
probably
is.
the horror ones.
I've done A Way Out with a friend. That is a great game. That's co-op done well, is what that is. That's
Well, I mean, because it sort of reminds you of that series Prison Break, right?
Yeah, it's exactly what I mean.
It's exactly what that is. I mean, I dug that series. I thought that was really. I think Dominic Purcell was amazing. Yeah, for sure. You guys reading comics right now?
Yes, we actually have started the what was it, the new Spider Gwen? Is that what it is?
Ghost Spider.
Yes. I'm getting confused already. Yeah, but Ghost Spider. We started reading that. We've been doing a series on that.
That's cool.
Kind of, yeah.
Did you guys ever read the 2018 Jeff Johns Shazam series that he did?
I have not.
I have
but
a
I want
friend
to because I love Jeff Johns. I
have a friend PK that loves everything Jeff Johns does, and I bet he knows exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah, there's the first volume is really great, and then the second one, it's the Magic Lands, and oh man, it just goes off the chain, and there's like so many interesting things there. I mean, it was kind of, I felt like I sort of had been sort of mining through different comics and whatnot, and then you hit like a vein of gold, and it's like, oh my gosh, there's two full-on trade paperbacks of this thing. Yes,
Yeah.
win.
At one point before my life kind of blew up, I had upwards of 14,000 comic books in my collection.
Nice.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
Sadly, I don't have that anymore, but
I typically when I go to a lot of the, like if I'm going to a new comic book store, typically what I look for are the 1970s runs of Doctor Strange. I just love that kind of sense of psychedelic and color and whatnot that they have to them. And the stories are really interesting, and I find them to be just kind of trippy, interesting in a way. So those are the ones that I like to collect. And I just got Roy Thomas to sign my first issue of Captain Carrot and the Amazing Zoo Crew.
Nice.
He was out.
That sounds so familiar.
Yeah, for Tucson Comic Con, it was amazing, and I got to meet him. And he was a really nice man. Really nice man.
At one point, I had, and I still may have it back in California. I don't know, a near complete run of Hal Jordan's Green Lantern, the original run stuff. So
all right,
that's one of my favorite characers right there. So
yeah.
But we don't talk about the movie that what's his name did. That was crap.
Whoa! I liked the Green Lantern. I know you don't, but I liked it. I liked it.
But you have bad taste, so it's okay.
I also like the original Super Mario Brothers movie too.
Oh yeah, of course you do.
Oh my! This could get interesting.
But if we were to say, okay, now I have a question based on comics. Paul knows what my favorite supervillain is. Do you have a favorite supervillain?
Interesting. Because there's a lot of different ways of categorizing how that villain manifests in a particular series. Right. Like if you read Moon Knight, the notion of who that villain is very nebulous. I really enjoyed the DC one. What was it? What's his name? When you can't get to sleep, it's called Insomnia. And the Insomnia character the villain in that series, in the latest DC horror run that they did, I thought was really intriguing. The Joker, the is it the Batman who kills?
The Killing Joke?
The Batman Who Laughs?
The Batman Who Laughs.
The Batman Who Laughs.
With the spikes and whatnot. And that's a really... the imagery on that is really intriguing. It kind of collides a lot of things. It almost collides like Time Bandits with like Hellraiser. And I love that kind of iconography and putting together within that context. I think that's really, really intriguing. Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of them there. I don't know. How do you choose a favorite villain?
Well, there's one villain that rules them all. And Paul, you're going to agree with me.
No, I'm not.
You're going to agree with me.
I think he's a brain dead lump, but okay.
Juggernaut. I love the Juggernaut. There's just something. He's on, that unstoppable, his ability to just not truly think and just do, like he's not worried about what he's up against. He's just going to do what he wants to do.
Yeah.
And he's the only supervillain or villain, however you want to phrase it, because his helmet, kind of gives us some abilities there, that beat the Hulk.
Yeah, but if you put him in a box, he can't move. So, whatever. His weakness is small spaces. Yes.
Wow, Paul. So meet the Juggernaut.
Juggernaut, killed by claustrophobia.
That's it.
Yeah.
But yeah, the Batman and the Green Lantern are my two favorite characters. Batman because I love the take no crap attitude that just does what he's got to do. Never mind that he's batshit crazy, literally. But
I do love. Batman and Green Lantern also. Together, that's one of the primary road series. It's a fantastic group. I love that. Brave and the Bold. good stuff.
Yep.
Man.
And I had for a while I had what's his name, Grendel's when they did Batman or Green Lantern and Green Arrow, when they had that series that
Yes.
Mike
About drug addiction.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That whole thing was so well done. The art was amazing.
Yeah, and it just kind of got you.
Yeah.
It did. Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Now there's one superhero that I just literally can't stand.
Uh-oh.
It's a DC superhero.
Okay, I've partitioned my brain.
And some people are going to disagree with me because the Kneel Before Zod was a great scene, but Superman.
Okay. You got to take Superman 2 and throw it out the window. Okay, that has no canon whatsoever. You know that.
Yeah, but Kneel Before Zod was the.
It's a fun movie, but it's not Superman. You know, the man threw saran wrap at people. You know.
There's been some interesting takes with Superman. Let's see. Remind me the name of the author that did Flex Mentallo.
Ooh.
Because
that sounds like something Paul would know.
It was combination. It was those two guys. They did a Superman series that was wonderful. And I can't, it's not coming. Grant Morrison and Frank. But they did the Flex Mentallo series, which, you know, if you watch the superhero series on the DC superheroes with Robot Man and all that kind of stuff, he was on there a little bit. But then they did
You're talking about Grant Morrison and Richard Case?
Quietly. Was it Quietly and Morrison and Quietly? They did a Superman series that was quite amazing. Yeah, Superman becomes oversaturated with the rays of the sun, and it causes him to begin to die. And it's a really kind of an interesting, like, heroic, tragic arc. Really fun.
Yeah, I get a lot of crap because I think Superman himself is a rather boring character.
Can be. Yeah.
There's a reason that Bruce calls him a Boy Scout. You know, it's like I always find it interesting, the stories around him, the villains they put against him.
Sure.
One of my favorites they did, and I really wish they would do this in either animated form or even live action, was Superman versus Aliens.
Oh yeah.
Because did you ever read that one?
No.
Where he had to make a because you know him never kill, but then he's stuck with these aliens. Well, if I don't kill them, they're going to go on and continue to destroy civilizations. But if I do kill them, I'm going against my natural self.
Yep.
Which I found that story very interesting. A very interesting take on getting a deeper look at how he would operate in that situation.
So then the Man of Steel quandary then, where he actually has to kill Zod.
Right.
Same thing?
Same sort of thing, yeah.
Same sort of thing. Okay.
And there's still some drama about whether he should have killed Zod. You know, that's
that's the question there for sure. Yeah. Was there anything else we haven't covered yet? It feels like we've gone wide ranging.
Yeah,
here.
we've covered like a lot of everything.
Yeah.
And I will say that when your movie's coming out, we got to have you back and we got to talk about the movie that's coming out as well.
Yeah, I'd love to. I only have one line. I'm in 3 scenes. It's kind of, again, stepping out into a newer thing. So, and it just so happens that in Arizona here, they film a lot of stuff. We've got a lot of Western stuff in here. So yeah.
Because you got the only area that still looks like Gold West, kind of, you know.
This is true. This is very true.
And then the Arthur, the person you're working with, I think it's going to be interesting because the other stuff he's done is very interesting. It's very,
It's an adaptation of Nikolai Gogol's Dead Souls, but a Western. So you start thinking about, like, you know, how Seven Samurai became the Magnificent Seven and just became awesome.
Yeah.
You know, and I'm thinking like the same thing. It's got this literary pedigree, and at the same time, Alex Cox has this like amazing artistic vision. I think it's just going to be a fantastic film. I'm really excited just to be on set.
And I really hope that, because when they took the Seven Samurai and made it the Magnificent Seven,
Yeah.
To be able to take that story and make it resonate with American audiences, that was a big deal.
Yeah.
And it still resonates today. You know.
Yeah.
So very cool.
Absolutely.
Yes, the question. Okay, so
the infamous Polly the Elf question.
Okay, so this has been brought up tonight, but I kind of know where you might go with this. Pineapple on pizza, yes or no?
I like to include everybody, so I'm going to say yes.
I'm
sorry.
This interview is over.
But I like all kinds of weird stuff on pizza. I had pizza the other day that had a little bit of like pork cheek there. And it was just fantastic.
Pork cheek is good, I'll tell you.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. Yeah. Yeah. Vegan ones.
All right.
Vegan.
So,
you know what I used to do, and when I was in college, if I didn't want to share my pizza, I'd order it with sardines on it because I can eat that. And
that's
I would have but nobody else would touch it. I'm like, that's okay with me. Get you.
Some good omega-3s in there. Those oil fishes are good for you.
So Paul just confirmed he's the penguin.
Oh, okay. Fair. I think I would be Bane.
There you go. Okay, since we now you got me wanting to know. Have you watched the new series, The Penguin, on HBO?
I have not.
You need to watch that. Trust me.
There's a lot of things I like about the Batman, the new film.
Right.
But there's a few things that I've said. I think it's meant for a different generation than me. I think it's great. I love what he's done, but I don't think it's this. And Nolan isn't really my favorite either.